Hey, how's it going here? This is Casey Ryford presenting my video presentation. I am from Buffalo, New York. I am licensed in elementary education 1 through 6, English language arts 7 through 12, and students with disabilities 1 through 12. Um, I graduated my undergrad in 2014. I spent 2 years substituting at different districts in the city and in the suburbs. I had three long term positions. I had a 6 through 8 811 classroom for 2 months. I had a math and science inclusion special ed position in 6th grade for 6 months, and I was in a English remedial help class for 7 through 12. My first two periods I would work with one 7th grade class, one 8th grade class, and then afterwards I would move and I would have several mixed periods of 9 through 12 where I help students individually with their English work. So I did that for 2 years. This year I am working in a BOCES alternative high school where I teach 9th and 10th grade English. That school is pretty interesting because we get students from all over the North Buffalo area who need more help with rather behavioral, emotional, or physical more attention. It's a 611 high school, and here is my portfolio. So this is my portfolio's homepage here. Basically, what it consists of are just different pictures of things that represent my first year of teaching English 9 and English 10. For English 9, I have a lot of Odyssey stuff. That was one of my major units, along with teaching poetry. You'll notice there's a lot of hip hop in there. We were using a lot of music, specifically hip hop, to teach that unit. And for English 10, the two major units were Fahrenheit 451, and we are in the midst of a Stephen King unit right now. The area that I would like to concentrate on for this assignment focuses on CAEP 1.4, demonstrate skills and comment to creating supportive environments that afford all P12 students access to rigorous college and career-ready standards. The reason I selected this area is because I got good feedback on it when I handed in my week 2 assignment with my 1.4 and 1.5 artifacts, as well as because the artifacts that I did choose were things that I take some pride on and I can discuss in great detail. So let's begin doing that. All right. So the first artifact I used was the QRI Final Summary from C and T 842, Supporting Striving Readers, Adolescent through Adult. This report is an accumulation of different activities I worked on with a student who was reading below grade level to determine instruction that would work best in helping that student. Working as a substitute when this activity was completed, I chose to collaborate with an English teacher in the building to find a student who I was somewhat familiar with who was also reading below grade level. So I looked at her list of students and I said, and she told me which ones were reading below grade level, so I looked for a familiar one. The student we chose was a 9th grade student of a history teacher that I regularly substituted for, who was actually a neighbor of someone I went to high school with. So, when she was in my class, she got to be like, "Oh, do you know this person?" I'm like, "Yeah," and we made that connection, and I kind of knew who she was, so I was gonna be able to work with her. Once we selected that student, her English teacher explained to me that she's a student that likes to read but loses focus when she isn't interested in the book or the topic of the book, and that she struggles with comprehension questions. So you can see here, our first activity that we had to do together was a card game, and a book testing, and what we did for this, I wrote up some questions that I could put on cards that rather dealt with how she thought of herself as an English language student, how she felt of the class itself, maybe some questions regarding English language, or just general questions about who she might be as a person. This was an activity to kind of connect with that student as, you know, a student of English language, but also as a person. So we did that in the cafeteria after school one day. We took turns each drawing the cards. I mixed them all together, both general and English language based questions. And each time someone picked a card, that person would answer the question, and then we would get into somewhat of an informal discussion about that question and about topics relating to that question, just to kind of see, you know, how she was able to think of rather those English language questions or not. And then we had a book tasting, or excuse me, a book testing, which after that card game, I was able to find out what types of books she liked and what she does when she tries to look for books or other forms of reading. And so I was able to comprise, you know, a set of 20 so reading articles, whether it be books, magazines, anthologies, to see if she would want to read them. And my main focus for that was to see if she would go for books that or reading materials that, you know, had to do with topics of interest she liked, or if she was, you know, judging by reading level, because while she likes to read and her reading level is below grade level, I wanted to see if she shied away from books because, or reading other reading materials, because they were too hard, even though they were topics of interest, or if she would want to read those books and try to challenge herself to see if she was interested. And she did go for a lot of the books that, or reading materials that interested her. Specifically, during the card game, she told me that she likes thinking about the way people think and kind of psychology-based level topics. She likes watching documentaries on that, so I picked up an anthology on the human mind and psychology, and it's, you know, a college level text, but she actually put that in the pile that she would want to read. So that was something that I was quite proud of, because, you know, she really exemplified reading for interest and challenging herself. So that was a good activity. After that, I had to present grade level sight word lists to determine her vocabulary and pronunciation. Then I had to make an assessment of how she approached reading difficult words without context. You see, I started with the 5th grade list and I worked through the 12th grade list. You see, in grades 5th through 8, she did pretty well. She had a couple hesitations going into the 8th grade list, but she generally got 1, 2, or none of them wrong. Once it gets to grades 9 and 10, you see she starts to slide a little. But what interested me, and what, again, I was proud of her for, was when she realized that she was struggling with some of the words. You could see in grades 11 and 12 that she kind of began to slow down a little bit and, you know, really try to pronunciate the words. And you could see the positive results in grade 12, where she took a little up spike in her results. After that, we had to do a running record to see her process of reading. We did a 9th grade narrative and a 10th grade expository text. For the 9th grade one, she did pretty well. It was a topic she was interested in. For the 10th grade expository, it was a little more frustration coming from that. She didn't do as well with and as you can see here, this is kind of the explanations for both of those. With the narrative, the terms were more about like events and places rather than things, so it didn't really have to affect her comprehension. While the expository test, reading text, the terms, the vocabulary terms, the hard terms were dealing with the topic. It was a passage about earthquakes, and she couldn't really put together the terminology to comprehend what that text was saying. So that was a little bit harder. Her fluency depended on the difficulty of the text combined with interest in the material. When the text became more difficult, she slowed down and tried to read more carefully. But if she was less engaged, she would try to kind of read it faster to get it over with a little bit. So, that was that. Afterwards, we had to formulate instruction to serve that student, and